It's no secret that reptile keepers love weird things, and we're a little weird ourselves. But a lot of people get into reptiles specifically because they like something that's unique and a little bit different than our typical cats or dogs. And with that, some of the most unique reptiles are animals that are not just unique as a species, but unique as an individual. This is Maisie here, and together we are going to take a trip through the zoo and see what are the top 5 most unique animals here at Spock Sanctuary. Okay, before we get into our top 5 most unique animals, I did want to mention that just because an animal is unique does not necessarily mean it is desirable. So what I mean by that is an animal might be unique because of something that's happened in its past, or something genetic that was a little bit different. And that can make care very, very complicated for them. And we just wanted to provide this video as a way of showing you these unique animals and sharing a little bit of their story. An example of that is Pico here. Pico has floppy tail syndrome. Floppy tail syndrome means that when he's facing downward in his enclosure, his tail kind of flops over because the ligaments in his pelvis and the surrounding area don't hold that tail straight. There's a lot of reasons for why that's caused, but that doesn't make him any less valuable as an animal or any less desirable as an animal, but it does make him more unique than a typical day gecko might be. So that's just an example of what I mean by that, and I don't want this video to be interpreted as, oh, that animal is unique, so I want to get an animal just like it. A lot of these animals would not be able to thrive without some specialized care, and I just wanted to point that out before we got into this video. So first up, our number 5 on this list is Jupiter. Jupiter's may not be as unique as an individual as he is as one of our most unique species here. Jupiter is a knobtail gecko from Australia. He is specifically a smooth knobtail gecko, and they are known for having these giant bulbous eyes. They remind me a lot of cats because they pounce on their prey and they tend to explore a lot like a cat does. But Jupiter here is unique because he is one of our most sought after animals that people come in to want to see. People like to see the cute animals the most, and Jupiter, as I'm sure you can tell, is one of our cutest animals here. So what makes Jupiter so unique as an animal is that you don't see these in a lot of collections. Knobtail geckos as a whole, you might see every once in a while in a zoo, but even in most zoos, they're not something that the zoos collect very often. The zoos like to have large animals or animals that are, very easy to see from a long ways away, and not something that you kind of have to look for as often. But that doesn't make Jupiter any less of an entertaining ambassador here at the sanctuary. Something that people love to do with him is actually feed him here at the sanctuary, so that's not something you get to do with an animal that's as unique as Jupiter is. But he is one of our fan favorites here, and if you would like to feed him yourself, don't be afraid to stop in and give Jupiter a snack. Okay, our next unique animal is Nectar, one of our bearded dragons. So Nectar is a little bit different than most bearded dragons. From a distance, she might look pretty normal, but when you get up close, you'll see that she actually doesn't have the spiky nature that most bearded dragons have. With that, Nectar is what we call a silkback bearded dragon. You might have heard of scaleless snakes. So there's scaleless corn snakes, ball pythons, similar snakes like that. But in lizards, scalelessness doesn't have the same sort of effect because bearded dragons are from such an arid area of Australia. Being a silkback or a scaleless bearded dragon means that their care is far different than a normal desert species like a bearded dragon should be. Bearded dragons should have really high wattage lighting, should have a really hot hotspot, a really high powered UVB. But for a silkback bearded dragon, those lights can actually be very, very harmful to them. So it's important to be able to regulate those based on what you're seeing in activity and growth in your bearded dragon. We kind of had to learn because there's not a lot of information online about silkback bearded dragon care, but we found that a lower UVB helps her from getting any burns or anything like that, and a slightly less powerful hotspot, but still fairly warm, is beneficial to her. The biggest change though we found is that having a lot more humidity helps her shed her skin a lot better. Because she doesn't have scales that create an easy separation when she's shedding, having to shed in all one big piece so that way she doesn't get any shed stuck is really hard to figure out how to do. By having higher humidity, that allows her to shed a lot easier. And the other hard part is that we have to give her regular baths. So while she is unique, she is a very big challenge to work with sometimes because of how specialized her care needs to be. We constantly have to monitor her and figure out how to continue to better her care, but that doesn't make her any less unique, and that's why we wanted to add her in this video. We don't recommend getting scaleless bearded dragons because of how advanced their care is, but when Nectar first came to us, we wanted to make sure that we could provide her a long and happy life. And so to do that, we've decided to keep her as an ambassador to teach about how to support ethical keepers and what to look for that is not super ethical to produce, such as the scaleless bearded dragon. The next animal we have here actually just moved out to the zoo today, so she's one of our most recent ambassadors. However, she also was the inspiration for this video. This next animal doesn't actually have a name yet, so if you can think of a name, leave it down in the comments. But this animal was brought to us by a breeder who commonly produces these geckos. They're called chameleon geckos. They're from New Caledonia, like a lot of the other arboreal geckos. But she has a bit of a kink in her spine, and it makes a sort of like hunchback look to her. And because of that, this breeder decided to hold her back and not produce with her in an effort to prevent that from potentially being passed down. And so it's very, very important that when breeders do produce, they're able to realize how to make their animals the most happy and healthy as possible. And when we heard her story, and we wanted to make sure that just because she has those deformities doesn't mean that she's any less valuable as an individual, and she can still provide great educational value even though she's a little bit different and a little bit unique compared to a lot of her counterparts as chameleon geckos. Chameleon geckos are also a species that you don't see very often, so she's also unique in that way. And because of that, we have been able to show her off and see people sort of learn about a new species that is very similar to a lot of the other species we keep, like crested geckos or gargoyle geckos, but is a little bit more unique because of their coloration, their size, and a little bit of their attitude in some ways as well. Our number 2 on our countdown is Raz, or Orazio. Orazio gets his name from the Latin term of good eyesight, and you might be able to guess why that is. Raz is blind in one of his eyes, and so we're not sure where it came from, if it was something that happened or if it was something he was born with. But when he came to the sanctuary, he was a very energetic little dude, and sometimes he does like to jump, and the problem with that is when you only have one eye, you can't see how far away things are. He just jumped right for us there. But Raz here used to be my class pet when I used to be a teacher, and he is not a very intimidating little dude, but he is one that we haven't been able to have like a super big enclosure, or an enclosure with a lot of different opportunities for him to climb too high and stuff, because we worry about him taking a little bit of a tumble. Now, Raz is unique in other ways, like he dropped his tail, and he's a bit of a unique coloration. Raz is one of the absolute cutest ambassadors and one of the absolute most memorable animals we have here. The most unique animal here at the sanctuary is Button. Now, from a distance, and to most people who come in, if you don't hear Button's story, he seems like a very normal bearded dragon adolescent. Like if he's just like a small bearded dragon, he's just as spiky and just as energetic and just as fun. But most people don't believe when I tell them that Button here is actually 2 years old. Typically at this size, a bearded dragon would be 2 feet long. Button here, when he was young, was bit on the head by one of his clutch mates, and something changed in his brain that he never grew up. So we're not sure the details of why that is. He still has a scar on the top of his head from that bite, but his name is named after Benjamin Button because he is an old man in a little body, and so he doesn't slow him down at all. He still hunts just as well. We've had a lot of fun watching him chase down food. It does make things a little bit complicated because bearded dragons, when they're little, they get a lot of bugs. When they're older, they get more vegetables. And so for a while, it was kind of hard to try to figure out what to feed Button. Do we feed him what a baby bearded dragon should have, or do we feed him what an adult bearded dragon should have? Now, because he's not growing as much, he doesn't need as much protein. And so we've sort of done a mix of the two, but with a little more vegetables. Button's sort of a permanent little guy for us, and he serves as a great educational opportunity of what growth typically would look like in an animal, even though he didn't grow up. What he should have looked like is a good educational opportunity, and we sort of are able to take care of this old man, despite his little size, for the rest of his life. And so it's been a really cool opportunity to work with him and to see that, and to see how unique reptiles can be. A lot of these animals are super fascinating because they have these different attributes, but sometimes you don't realize how cool they are until you see the things that they go through and what they're able to bounce back from in some cases. And to see that Button still thrives despite his injury and the condition that it caused. He's still loving life just as much as he would if he grew up. If you like the animals that you saw today and want to see more animals like it, don't be afraid to stop on by our storefront, check out our animals that we have, or maybe even take home an animal of your very own. If you want to see more stories about our animals that we have here at the sanctuary, follow along with our Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, where we post about these animals pretty regularly. And then if you want to see more videos like the one you saw today, don't be afraid to hit subscribe, like the video, and follow along in our journey. We hope to see more of you soon, and we hope that you guys enjoy it.